Peace, party people. This is a special episode, still in season 2 of Where My Killer Tape At. Since Black Panther is coming up next week, we'd have to do a show that kind of like gives you the background on the Black Panther, T'Challa, Wakanda, and all things dope. Just a FYI, this is mostly comic book stuff, so I'm going to get real geeky. And very little stuff to do with the Marvel Cinematic Universe or the MCU. So please bear with me. You might learn something new. There's a lot of terminology we're going to throw around. We're going to try to explain everything. The only segment we're going to keep from my usual episode is the health segment. Everything else is going to be about Black Panther, T'Challa, and Wakanda. So, come on out here and geek with me. Check it out.
It seems to me that the black personality now has a kind of vigor, a kind of vitality, and a kind of a sense of life, of something which does not come from here, but comes from much deeper region.
They won't be the king, but long live the chief. For a little old thing, little boys bang bang. Long live the chief.
Why is this episode called The Frogs of Solomon? Well, Jack Kirby on his run back in 1977 of the Black Panther began his story arc, issues 1 through 4, dealing with these is an ancient artifact that was supposedly owned by King Solomon, and it allowed him to travel through space and time. So Ta-Nehisi Coates in his current run of Black Panther is actually bringing them back. So I think it's kind of dope. So that's why I call it King Solomon's Frogs. So I appreciate y'all for checking it out. Word. A lot of geeks like to use this term that we call retcon, R-E-T-C-O-N, which is short for retroactive continuity. We say it all the time because it literally happens all the time. Now, it happens all the time, mostly in comics. I know the earliest example that we have was Sherlock Holmes. Sherlock Holmes, when Sir Arthur Conan Doyle killed off Sherlock Holmes, people were upset. So he had to go back and make some changes and do some prequels and stuff like that to fix that and kind of like bring them back to life. So it means retroactive continuity, and it's a plot device, a literary device in which you reframe past events to serve a current plot, right? So here's an example. So like back in the 90s, Marvel did this thing called the Clone Saga, where they were saying that Peter Parker is actually a clone of someone else. And the person that we thought was a clone was actually the original, and Peter Parker was the clone. So for them to do that, they had to retcon that story. So they had to go back and change something. Comic books do it all the time to add new stories, new characters, new plot lines, and everything. So it can get to be a bit of a headache. The only people that really can push through the pain are people who are long-time comic book readers. Like if you've been in the game for 30, 40 years, maybe I say 20 years too, but you get so used to them retconning. A lot of times you just ignore it. And it's wild, but it's a literary device and it's used consistently. So we're going to say that a lot because there's a lot of stuff that we're going to talk about here about Black Panther, where there's going to be a lot of retconning that if you go back to get the original stuff, it wasn't in there. So bear with us, please. And, before we go any further, here's some suggested reading and pretty much the publication history of Black Panther. Now, remember, T'Challa first appeared, and I was wrong, issue 52 of the Fantastic Four is when the first time he appeared. later on, because he was such a hit, Marvel decided to print stories about Black Panther in a series called Jungle Action. And the first 4 issues of Jungle Action had nothing to do with Black Panther. It was kind of like Tarzan bullshit. And they brought him in issue number 5, and then, which they reprinted the story for Fantastic Four. And then in issue number 6, they just did the stories about Black Panther. And that lasted, and that started in 1973 under the writer Don McGregor. And that went from issue 6 to 24. And that's when a lot more of the mythos of T'Challa and Wakanda was made. In 1977, Jack Kirby returned to Marvel after he left. And he started actually writing a Black Panther series. And that ran 15 issues. Jack Kirby left in the 12th issue. Then there was some other things where T'Challa was put in. And I think there was a thing called Marvel Premiere and a bunch of other stuff that he was thrown in. They gave a couple of story arcs in there. But it wasn't until 1998 when Marvel revisited putting Black Panther out, and they gave it over to Christopher Priest, which I can't remember who it was, but somebody just did a nice piece on Christopher Priest. I'm gonna look for it and put it in the show notes, because his run, and that's considered volume 3. So Jungle Action was volume 1, the Jack Kirby Black Panther was volume 2, and the Christopher Priest run is considered volume 3, and it's considered the definitive Black Panther story, and also about Wakanda. And most people consider it the best run on Black Panther. And what you're going to see in the movies takes from a lot of that stuff, from a lot of what Christopher Priest run. So then he had that. And then in 2005, Reginald Hudlin went and did Black Panther volume number 4. Reginald Hudlin, yes, the director of House Party 1 and 2. He was also a director of photography under Spike Lee. And at one time, he was the CEO of BT. And I think in 2006, he put out the Black Panther, what's called it, the stop animation version, because Marvel was doing a whole bunch of stop animation stuff. They did one on the X-Men, they did one of the Inhumans, they did one of Iron Man, and they did one of Black Panther, and that was released on the BT. It's actually pretty dope, and you can probably find it on Netflix before they take it out. But also, you can also find it on YouTube. But that was in 2005. That was volume number 4. In 2009, volume number 5 was released of Black Panther, and Reginald Hudlin wrote the first couple of issues, and then he turned it over to Jonathan Mayberry. Jonathan Mayberry writes a lot of horror stuff. He does some a good zombie series for young adults called Rotten Ruin. It's actually really dope. But he did that, and that was really about Queen Shuri. It was really about after T'Challa wasn't the king of Wakanda anymore, and his sister took over, Queen Shuri, and she becomes the new Black Panther. And that's actually dope. And then he did the Doomwar, which I'm going to talk about later on. And then in February 2011, David Liss took over Black Panther. But what happened is Daredevil had left New York after the situation where he tried to control the Hand and he was possessed by a demon. And that became the Daredevil series became Black Panther, The Man Without Fear. Before it was Daredevil, The Man Without Fear. That's not considered a volume, but they consider it part of the run. I thought it was dope, but it's called Black Panther, The Man Without Fear, and that was written by David Liss. That was a dope one. He ends up fighting the Kingpin and everything. And then in 2016, you have Ta-Nehisi Coates' current run. That's where it began, in 2016. So there you have it. The runs that you should be looking out for. If you have, Marvel has this subscription, I think it's like $12.99 a month. I can't remember, for the Marvel Unlimited online, and you get access to all of their old stuff. So you'll be able to access this stuff without paying for it digitally. So I think that'll probably be the best bet. A good present to give people. Marvel also released early 2017. They released volume 1 and 2 of Christopher Priest's wonderful run on Black Panther. So you can buy that, and they're about $25.99 each. You can probably get them cheaper if you buy them together, and on Amazon probably get free shipping. But highly recommended as a good gift, because again, what you're going to see in the movies is going to come from Christopher Priest's run. So I hope that helps out. Word.
Since when did black men become kings?
You have no idea, yeah, the meaning to what I say. And you have no idea how I got this way. Now hear my dream, and by the time you wake, I'll look down from the
Also, before we go any further, I do use two other terms in here. One is trade or trade paperback. Trade or trade paperback is when they take it's usually 6 issues and they put it into one softcover book. Sometimes they put it in hardcover. A lot of times trades are collections of different stories from different comic books of various titles, and they put it into one. Usually that's probably the cheapest way to buy comics, because right now the average Marvel comic is $3.99. DC comics are between $2.99 and $3.99. So the best thing to do is to wait for it to come on trade paperback, and usually they go for about for Marvel it goes between $14.99 and $19.99. If you look around, you can probably, especially on Amazon, you could probably catch a couple of them at $9.99. I go to comic conventions, and we usually purchase them there. So when we say run, we usually mean a volume set. So comic books are usually done in volumes. So they'll have issues 1 through 200 or something, and then they'll start over. Marvel is really good at this, or should I say bad, where they just keep rebooting and starting over. So you have several volumes. And then when we say story arc, we usually mean a story that takes between 3 to 4 issues to conclude, even though there's a premise behind it. But it's a story arc is something where it's kind of like when you watch on TV, you have episodes that, a story will last 2 or 3 episodes, and then they go on to the next one. So I hope those help out, because I know that we use a lot of terms that are kind of funny. I'm going to say one more. We're always talking about Secret Wars 2015, and I tried to really, because that's like another episode in of itself. But that's how Marvel kind of rejumped their universe. And I know that sounds crazy, but just bear with us. Word. I think it's very, very important that we talk about vibranium. And I love the fact that the Marvel Cinematic Universe, they tie everything in by saying, they made Captain America's shield by vibranium. And I think that's dope, because it automatically connects everything to Wakanda. We saw in Avengers Age of Ultron that he talked about Wakanda, referred to it, and then boom, Black Panther shows up in Captain America Civil War. But vibranium is important. What happened is, thousands of years ago, a meteor fell to Earth and landed in what we now know as Wakanda. And it was vibranium, but they call it the mound in Wakanda. It was this big, just huge, big thing, right? Pretty much almost an extension level event, right? Because not only did it crash land into Wakanda before it was Wakanda, it burrowed in. So they have to mine it. They have to mine it out. They don't have to use, what's amazing about vibranium is that they don't have to use big pieces to make it work, Anyway, the radiation affected the area in Wakanda, and it made, the people of Wakanda a little bit stronger, a little bit more, faster. Not like Captain America's size, but just, Anyway, just a FYI, Marvel has never revealed where vibranium came from. Right now, Wakanda has a space program, and they actually colonized the planet that they call Bast. The Bast is the name, B-A-S-T, is the name of their panther god. And so they're thinking that they might have found a planet that has vibranium. So that's something that's been eluded, but no one has been able to actually find out the origin of vibranium. Anyway, Wakanda is the only place where vibranium is. So the Wakandans, built their city around it, and it eventually became like a country, and they kept out all outsiders. They kept this policy of isolationism over the years, and they defeated all invaders, European and otherwise. They just beat everybody. And they became strong, and because of their vibranium, they were able to make better weapons, much better technology. And currently in the Marvel universe and in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, they are considered the most advanced country on the planet Earth. So now there's been some retconning done. And one of them is that they're saying that the panther god Bast was kind of like a deity from the Egyptian gods, and actually chose the Wakandans to move to Wakanda and saw them as their chosen people. And so they're kind of saying that that Bast kind of had a hand in that. So that's actually a pretty dope story, and they deal with it in Fantastic Four. But it's like I said, they still haven't told us where vibranium comes from or the origin of it. So that's all we know about it. Its properties are that it absorbs energy. So that's why if you look at Captain America in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, you can shoot a missile at his shield and it'll hit his shield, and it won't, like, the kinetic energy won't push him back, right? Because let's say, for example, you do have a piece of metal, piece of steel, you shoot a rocket to it. The rocket will hit, your arm will probably be intact, but it will blow that shield out of your hand and knock you over, right? So you'll survive the blast, but you might even get your arm broken. But, the vibranium shield will absorb that impact. Also, we learned during the Doomwar that one of the secret properties of vibranium is that it can actually enhance mystic energy. So, for example, like Doctor Strange, like if he was to use vibranium, it could enhance his power and his energy if he was to use vibranium. So that's just another property of it. And plus, it's like indestructible. Not as indestructible as adamantium, because adamantium is indestructible, but it is almost as and very close to. So it's a very hard metal to destroy in of itself. So, I always got to take it back, right? Original man, right? So just real quick, his T'Challa, who is the current emperor of Wakanda, king of Wakanda, his grandfather was Azuri. They call him Azuri the Wise. And Azuri the Wise is the one that actually met Steve Rogers originally back during World War II. I know if you look at the Black Panther run, Reginald held in his first 6 issues, which later on became the BET show, the Black Panther, right? You see, that's the one that encounters, he kicks Steve Rogers' ass, right? They do meet again as a series called Flag of Our Fathers, Captain America and Black Panther, where the Red Skull sends some Nazi super soldiers to steal some vibranium from Wakanda, and Azuri, with the help of Captain America and the Howling Commandos and Nick Fury and Gabriel Jones and all those guys, beat them. And as a reward, Azuri gives Captain America his some vibranium, and he uses it to make his shield. That was retconned. That was actually retconned. That's a retconning. And retcon means retroactive continuity. I know I mentioned it earlier. So, but anyway, Azuri's son is T'Chaka. And T'Chaka was the one portrayed in Captain America Civil War, where we see, T'Chaka killed supposedly by Winter Soldier, we learned, but it wasn't Winter Soldier, it was by Baron Strucker, who we didn't know was Baron Strucker, right? They haven't mentioned that yet. But anyway, in the comic book, T'Chaka was actually killed by Ulysses Claw. Ulysses Claw, right? And that's the actual villain that's going to be in this movie alongside Killmonger. So he's actually in that series, as Reginald Hudlin does. He's actually the one that tries to invade Wakanda many times. And he almost does it, but, T'Challa double crosses him. But he actually kills T'Chaka, and T'Challa vows to have revenge, which he does later on, has revenge on Claw. So those are his parents, his dad and his granddad. And in T'Challa's family, the Black Panther line has been on there since the beginning. His family has been able to keep it. And, anybody could challenge the mantle of the Black Panther. They just have to beat him one-on-one combat. But of course, I know it's kind of like elitist because T'Challa has the best training, went to the best schools, has the most experience. He was an Avengers, a member of Fantastic Four. He's in the Illuminati, he's in the Ultimates. I mean, the guy has it all, so it's going to be hard to beat him. But yep. And we're going to get into this later on of how T'Challa loses the throne to his sister. So we're going to do that in a second. Word. just a little bit of history about T'Challa. He first appeared in Fantastic Four, I think number 52 under Jack Kirby. He was created by Jack Kirby and co-created by Jack Kirby and Stan Lee. And no, he was not named after the Black Panther Party. There's a debate as to when, because he was created in 1966. So, and the Black Panther Party started in Oakland in 1966, Oakland, California, that is. There's been a debate on when those things happen, right? So, and remember that Huey Newton of the Black Panther Party got the idea of using that symbol from the Lowndes County Black Panther Party. It was like a political party. So he got that idea from them. So, maybe Jack Kirby, who was closely following the civil rights movement, maybe he could have picked it up from them. We don't know. He never actually said. So there's been a debate about that. So what mostly everybody agrees with is that he created T'Challa and Black Panther a couple months before the creation of the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense in Oakland, California. So that's what we're agreeing with for now. That can probably change. That's not a retcon, but that can probably change. Just want to point that out. But so yes, 1960, he was first appeared in Fantastic Four. He beat their entire asses. Later on, he helped them out in many adventures. And then he became a member of the Avengers after the... Because there was you had the first generation, which was actually the Hulk, Iron Man, Thor, the Wasp, and Ant-Man. A lot of people don't know that. And then later on, Captain America came on board. The Hulk left, and they just had many more members. But he became later a member of the Avengers. Later on, Reed Richards and Sue were having issues, so they wanted to take a sabbatical. So they asked T'Challa to run the group alongside Storm. So it was Storm, T'Challa, The Thing, and Ben Grimm, and Human Torch. So he ran them again. And that wasn't the first time. That's not even the second time. They did it before for a short amount of time, helping out the Fantastic Four in their roster. But and again, like I said, he was a member of the Avengers. He's actually currently he's like a reserve member of the Avengers. So when they need him, they call him. He was also a member of the Illuminati, which I will talk about later on. And currently he's a member of the Ultimates, and he oversees the Alpha Flight program. And he actually has a space program going into space for Wakanda. The Ultimates was a group started by Blue Marvel, and what they wanted to do was they wanted to create a group of beings that dealt with really strong issues, like big issues. Like the first thing was figuring the Galactus problem. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, I'm mumbling over my words. And I know they do those big cosmic problems. They also went to try to fix the time-space continuum issue that happened because a lot of people in the X-Men and the Avengers were going back in time to try to fix things, and they just kept messing up the timeline and would eventually destroy the universe. So they tried to figure out how to fix that. So yeah, and they had Blue Marvel in it, Spectrum, Monica Rambeau, Miss America Chavez, who also has super strength, but she can travel between dimensions. T'Challa and Captain Marvel, the white lady one, so who's they're about to make a movie about her. So he was in that group, and currently they're not together, but they still kind of work together. I know it's kind of confusing, but those are the groups that he's been in. I think it's important to talk about Marvel's Illuminati. And no, this is not the Illuminati that you hear about in all those early and late 90s hip-hop records that we talk about here and where my Killer tape at. The Illuminati was a group of heroes, particularly leaders, that decided to get together to handle the big problems that faced the Earth. Because they felt like there was a lot of things that were going on, particularly after the Avengers ran into the Kree and the Skrulls and the Kree-Skrull War. They realized that there's a big giant universe out there with beings and planets and civilizations that are many times stronger than those of Earth. and they felt that any of them could be a threat to the Earth, either destroying it or taking over. So they decided to get together and handle these threats, and they all decided to have their first meeting in Wakanda. It wasn't proposed yet, so they approached T'Challa with it, and the original members consisted of Reed Richards of the Fantastic Four, Doctor Strange, Prince Namor of Atlantis. Hopefully we'll see a movie about him. Tony Stark, Iron Man of the Avengers, Professor Xavier, right? And it's about Black Bolt of the Inhumans. Yes, Black Bolt of the Inhumans. So they originally asked T'Challa to join, and he said no. And the reason why T'Challa said no was because, and he was right, it ended up biting him in the butt later on. The original plan for the Illuminati was to remain secret, to make these secret deals between one another, to fix these problems without telling their fellow team members or spouses or significant others. So if they did something, Reed Richards couldn't tell Sue or anybody in the Fantastic Four. Professor Xavier couldn't tell anybody in the X-Men, and so on and so forth. T'Challa felt that they should have been transparent what they were doing. He didn't like that. He didn't like the secrecy. And again, of course, remember that T'Challa is also the king of Wakanda. There's certain things that he couldn't keep from his advisors, right? And his really, the thing about, and what I love about T'Challa is that really his prime directive is to keep his kingdom together. So any other allegiances are second. So he really couldn't be a member of the Illuminati. It just wasn't right. It would have been a lack of integrity, right? So that being said, they did several things, and eventually T'Challa had to actually call on them because he witnessed the first incursion. And we're going to get into Secret Wars a little bit, or I might not because this will just be longer, but he eventually does become a member of the Illuminati after the death of Professor Xavier during the Avengers versus X-Men crossover. And Beast takes Professor Xavier's place. He joins the Illuminati. And at this point, the reason why he joins it, and we're going to get into this as well, is because he is no longer the king of Wakanda. His sister is Shuri. So he is the king of the dead. And there's an necropolis below Wakanda that he kind of takes control over. So that's the reason why he could be a member of the Illuminati now, because he is no longer the monarch of Wakanda. So I hope that answers all the questions about the Illuminati. And again, if you get a chance, there's actually a series called The Illuminati. And we'll get into that later. It's wild because when I mentioned to people that T'Challa was married to Storm of the X-Men, a.k.a. Aurora Monroe, they always trip out. They be like, really? Really? And I know that, like, the way the movies are set up, the movies kind of like, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and then before Disney purchased Fox, the parts of Fox that have X-Men, people saw them as separate universes. And it's funny because when you look at the cartoon, it was kind of like the same thing. The cartoons kind of made it seem like they were separate universes, but they're not. Anyway, I thought this was dope because during Reginald Hudlin's run of Black Panther, T'Challa decided it was time for him to get married. So he literally ran around the world and met with different superheroes and, I guess courted them. One of them, a notable example was Monica Rambeau, a.k.a. Captain Marvel, a.k.a. Spectrum, who later is part of the Ultimates with T'Challa. But you see he tries to court some of them, but eventually he ends up approaching Aurora Monroe. She accepts, and, they get married. And it takes place, it's funny, it takes place during Marvel's Civil War. And actually during the Civil War, Wakanda was considered neutral ground for a lot of the superheroes. So they, at the time, Captain America and Iron Man had beef, but they were allowed to go to Wakanda, and T'Challa ain't let nobody fight there. He's like, it's neutral ground. And of course, it's a foreign country, so you can't just go to a foreign country and do whatever you want. So it's sovereign territory, right? So they had their marriage there in Wakanda, and this was during the Civil War, so it was kind of like a respite for a lot of the superheroes. So it was actually a pretty dope series. Reginald Hud, I'm going to talk about it later on, but they got married. Eventually, even after he loses his kingdom, and we're going to talk about that in Doomwar, he eventually annuls the marriage. Yes, T'Challa annuls the marriage. And he can do that because he's the head of the Black Panther cults and being the king of Wakanda. during the crossover Avengers versus X-Men, where the Phoenix comes back to Earth, and Hope Summers, who's like the grandchild of Scott Summers, aka Cyclops. Cyclops believes that he can use Hope Summers to harness the power of the Phoenix. So the X-Men take sides. Of course, Storm takes the side of the X-Men. T'Challa takes the side of the Avengers. And they actually fight each other. And he tells her, hey, man, we divorced. It's done. It's a wrap. So, yep, that was it. Lasted a couple years. Didn't think it was going to end. Everybody loved it. They were like the real power couple in the Marvel Universe. But, oh, well, there you go. So you ask, how did T'Challa lose the throne? Well, towards the end of Reginald Hudlin's run on Black Panther, Namor joins up with Dr. Doom, because Dr. Doom at the moment, he lost Latveria. So he's no longer head of Latveria. So he's running around trying to rebuild his power base. And him alongside Namor, he creates what's called the Cabal. The Cabal is like, an evil form of the Illuminati. So it's crazy, right? Anyway, Namor lures T'Challa there, and they attack him, and they put him in like a coma. So when he comes back, his sister Shuri takes over. She becomes the Queen of Wakanda. So I think that's just how it all happens. And then later on, Jonathan Mayberry does a run on Black Panther where Queen Shuri is the Black Panther, and she runs it. Later on, he does another series called Claws of the Panther. But that's how that turns out. It's a pretty dope. It's a short run, and you can probably find it if you look for it on trade. But it's not that it's not that hard to get a copy of. But I think you should, if you want to go, if you want to read this to lead to the events of Doomwar, and then later on lead into the events of Jonathan Hickman's New Avengers, and then eventually Secret Wars 2015. I hope that helps, and I hope I didn't get too geeky.
Medina Green, DCQ, Lord
I do want to get into Doomwar because I thought it was really dope, and then Marvel kind of like fixed everything when they did Secret Wars number 2015. Doomwar was when Dr. Doom decided that the next best thing for him to do is to invade Wakanda. We learn through T'Challa that vibranium also enhances magic. So Dr. Doom is like, hey, you know what? I am going to take all the vibranium and enhance my magic powers and make me strong, right? So he uses this group called the S2E3 to infiltrate the Wakandan government, overthrow Queen Shuri, and get rid of the royal family and kick them out. They head over to the X-Men Utopia, and at that time Utopia was located in San Francisco, and Cyclops at the time was the head of the X-Men, and he asked them for help. So they help him take back Wakanda alongside Deadpool and alongside the Fantastic Four. It's a pretty dope series. You can actually find that on trade. You can find that on hardcover or softcover trade. So it's really dope. And then the way T'Challa beats Dr. Doom, because Dr. Doom seems to have like he's like two steps ahead of everybody. He makes all the Wakanda on the planet, I take that back. Not Wakanda, but he takes all of vibranium and he makes it inert. So he pretty much makes it useless, and he kind of almost collapses the Wakandan economy. But we see later on that he takes care of that when they do that run on Black Panther, The Man Without Fear. So definitely another thing to check out. And I know a lot of people are always like, but Marvel fixed it back up after Secret Wars 2015. So I'm going to talk about the Illuminati again, but this time I'm going to talk about Jonathan Hickman's run on the New Avengers. I highly recommend, if you have the time and the money, to check out Jonathan Hickman's run on the Fantastic Four, which was amazing. He also did the Avengers, but the thing about the new Avengers is that it focused on the Illuminati. At this point in time, Charles Xavier was killed by Cyclops, so the Beast replaced his position on the Illuminati. T'Challa runs, while in Wakanda, he runs into what's called an incursion event. And what the incursion event is an event where two Earths run into each other. And those Earths are like pinpoints of that particular universe. I need to get into that. Anyway, what it is that Marvel, like DC, has several universes or multiverses, right? Marvel is just smart enough to number them. And there's tens of thousands, maybe more, of these different universes. And they're parallel to, like, ours is called Earth 616. You're going to hear me say that a lot. Earth 616. The universe that Miles Morales comes from is actually Earth 1610. But that's irrelevant at this point. Anyway, he witnesses an incursion event and he realizes that it's something that could destroy the entire universe. So he calls it Illuminati because that's the kind of stuff that they do. So his run, Jonathan Hickman's run on New Avengers, shows how T'Challa joins the Illuminati. And at this point, he is no longer the king of Wakanda. So as he does this, he makes some decisions that are detrimental to Wakanda because he has to, put the universe first. It's a really dope run. Again, highly recommended. It runs 35 issues. And of course, Doom saves everybody. Yes, that Doom, Dr. Doom. So we're going to go ahead and end that part right here. But just to throw that in there, Jonathan Hickman's New Avengers run is actually pretty dope and you should check it out. All right, party people, this is for a health segment. Again, this is the Frogs of Solomon Black Panther special. And what would I talk about when it comes to health? Well, let's try to put them all together, right? And this one is near and dear to my heart. Just real quick, who trained my man Chadwick Boseman for the role of Black Panther? Not only was he trained for his role in the actual movie, but also he trained them in Captain America Civil War. So that's the person that trained him. So you're going to ask, well, what martial arts is he doing in those movies? Well, we know that Maurice Crump also did some of the choreography for him. Maurice Crump does capoeira, which is what I do, right? He actually also does Kalianis, which is a Filipino martial art, right? And then also he does Muay Thai. So you can actually check him out online, and you spell his name Marrese and then Crump. So just with a C. You can actually see him in the movie Warrior King 2, starring Tony Jaa and the RZA. And he plays the antagonist. He's actually really dope in that movie. You get a chance to see it. I highly recommend it. Actually, it's one of Tony Jaa's. Tony Jaa's been in some crappy movies, but this one is actually really good, despite RZA's horrible acting. So definitely check that out. So those are the ones they do, capoeira, Muay Thai, and he does Kalianis, which is, again, the Filipino martial arts. And I used to dabble in Filipino martial arts, so I still practice it. I haven't been to a class in a while, but I still got it. I still, I always spar and stuff like that to keep my skills up. But if you're wondering, those are the ones you take. Capoeira is an African-Brazilian martial art. Muay Thai is actually from Thailand, and it's kickboxing, but they use knees and elbows in it and forearms, and also headbutts. So definitely you can. The thing about Muay Thai is because of MMA, mixed martial arts, Muay Thai has had a huge resurgence over the last decade. Because usually MMA fighters usually do Muay Thai and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So that's why those two martial arts have really really gotten big. Capoeira usually see in movies and video games. You probably see them in commercials as well. And it's African Brazilian. So there's usually, and I wrote a book on it, shameless plug, but there is capoeira in every city in every major city in the United States, even in Hawaii. I don't know about Alaska, but I got to check. But anyway, it's everywhere. You can't miss it. Muay Thai is also everywhere. Most MMA gyms, they usually have Muay Thai. And Kalianis is a little bit difficult to find. But if you're in places where there's big populations of Filipino Americans or Filipinos, places like the Southeast, Northeast, and California, you probably find some studios over there. But those are the ones. So if you're thinking about getting into those martial arts and, trying to be like T'Challa, I can't speak for the Dora Milaje. I don't know who did the choreography for that. But if you want to get into capoeira, I highly recommend it. Of course, right? Of course, shout out to Misty Crate. She's been telling me to talk about capoeira for the longest. But there you have it, party people. That is your health segment for this episode. So there you have it, the Frogs of Solomon, a nice, thick, geek joint from yours truly and us at Where My Killer Tape At. I hope you enjoy it. Hey, man, definitely got to give a shout out to the fan bros for doing their thing, Dizzle. Also, got to give a shout out to my geek family. X-Man, you know who you are, B-Boy Sabi, Vredren Zumbi, the big Ayoito from the Completo. And the baby girl, y'all know who y'all are. This is how we get down. Geeks for life. Word is born. So, check us out. You can hit me up at Dan Trezomi on Twitters or at OMIS Podcast, Omi's Podcast. We are on Stitcher. We are on iTunes, SoundCloud. And we're also on Google Play. So check us out. And also use the hashtag Where My Killer Tape At. Killer spelled Killa. Also, hashtag Black Panther so lit, man. But we will see you. I'm actually going to see you twice. We have a screening and everything. So shout out to all my peoples, all my Wushu folks that we're going to be putting together a demo on the 24th at Decca Middle. And then we're going to be, that's downtown Dayton. And then we're going to have a screening at Huber Heights Rave Cinema for $5 on the 24th, 3:30 showing. Come through. Word is born. We out.